Football in Hitchin dates back to 1865. Hitchin FC were one of the first ever teams to compete in the FA Cup, and they were the first ever team to win away at Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. Their successors, Hitchin Town FC, have completed multiple giant killings and are one of the most successful teams in the area. However, one thing that stuck with football in Hitchin right from the 1800s up to this day is their stadium, Topfield. The ground was opened back in 1871 by Hitchin FC and is one of the oldest stadiums in England. Shortly after its opening, the land that the ground sat on was now entrusted and owned by a charity group called the Cowes Commoners Trust. Towards the end of the 19th century, a new wooden main stand was built. However, in 1911, a fire spread around the stadium and this burnt down. Paired with other financial issues, the club then folded. During the First World War, several junior teams used Topfield to host their matches. However, once the war was over, today's club, Hitchin Town FC, were formed and they then took over the ground. Unfortunately, of course, not too long later, war struck out once more, this time World War II. And over this 6-year period, in what is now the car park, a searchlight factory was built and was painted in camouflage colours. An FA Amateur Cup tie was played here at Topfield back in 1955 between Hitchin and Wycombe Wanderers. Nearly 8,000 people attended, which is a record attendance for the club. It must have been buzzing here. In 1962, floodlights were introduced and used first in a friendly against Arsenal. A year later, a clubhouse was then built and was considered one of the finest at the time in the country in amateur football. These new floodlights were installed back in 2016 and were switched on by former Arsenal player Pat Rice, further continuing on the relationship with the Gunners. In the 2010s, despite a good relationship in the past, the Cowes Commoners Trust, which as I mentioned owned the land that the ground sat on, decided they wanted to sell the land in order to build a supermarket.
In 2012, the first rumours that the ground is owned by a charitable trust called the Cowes Commoners, and they did a deal with a developer, New Clifton Homes, whereby they were going to have this ground sold. I mean, everyone believes it was to Tesco to have a supermarket, and we were going to move to an out-of-town site, which they would pay for, but it's all done behind our back without our knowledge. And obviously you can imagine we were dead set against it, A, because this is fantastic, right in the middle of town, perfect setting, the history of the ground itself, and the new ground was right on the edge of town, so crowd-wise we'd have been very badly affected.
Luckily, after a protest attended by nearly 1,500 people and a lot of media coverage, plans were scrapped and a new lease was secured.
We decided to form a protest committee and things really started motoring. We got the local MP involved, we got the press involved, we got the charity commission involved, and it all led up to we decided to have a protest march through the centre of the town in December 2014. We had an open meeting on Butts Cove, which is the area just outside the ground, and one of the guest speakers was Guillaume Balaguer, the famous Sky commentator. He lived in Hitchin at the time. We had a local councillor myself as well, and we reckon there was about somewhere between 1,000 to 1,500 involved in the march. And as we walked through the town, I'll always remember the cars are bibbing their horns in support. People come out of shops to applaud. We came back to the ground where we'd given free entry for a game against Poole Town, who were top of the table at the time, and we won 1-0 in front of 1,600. And that really was the turning of the tide. The developers realised that there was a very strong feeling from the people of the town against moving us out of here. The protest continued, and eventually they pulled out of the deal, and we were then given a long-term lease.
A few years ago, the club raised nearly £61,000 from across the world to help improve facilities here at Topfield, and these 3 new stands behind me were bought because of this money.
The stand behind the goal blew down in one of the gales and was beyond repair. There were a lot of other problems, so we decided to hold a crowdfunder. This is in 2020. We didn't have any great expectations. We hoped to get, I think the original target was about 15,000, which we thought was ambitious even then, but we thought that would get the most immediate jobs done. Well, the money kept coming in, and so we had to keep increasing the target, because that's the way crowdfunder works. And eventually we ended up getting £61,000 in, which I'm told was a record for a non-league club. So we then had a lot more money than we ever imagined we was going to have. So we did, the first main job was a leaking roof on the main stand, but eventually we had enough money to build a new stand behind the goal, which has absolutely transformed the ground. It makes it look very modern, but the character of the ground is still the same. We've had to remove quite a lot of the wooden terracing for safety reasons, but the wooden terracing that's left has now been made as secure and safe as possible, so we meet all the health and safety regulations, and it's kept the character of the ground at the same time as being a much safer and more friendly environment. And we've actually found that since the improvements were made and the stand was built in 2021, our crowds have actually gone up, not necessarily because we've been successful on the pitch, but I think people now find the whole ground more welcoming. So you've got the mixture of an iconic ground that groundhoppers love to come to. It's still got its character, but it's been modernised as well. So we're very proud of where we are at the moment.
The dugouts here at Topfield are really nice. They feature a lovely modern curved shape, and the seats have their club logo on and are also padded, which is something you don't even see at many top tier teams, let alone non-league. Now both of the dugouts, home and away, are sponsored by the Gray family in memory of Wendy and John, who are lifelong supporters who both sadly passed away. It really does show the community sense of the club, and it's very nice to see that both of them are being remembered here.
Old and new, we had new dugouts put in a couple of years ago, and they were sponsored by, as you can see, a family memory of their parents. John was he's our programme seller and great volunteer for the club. His son still comes along. Right. The concrete here was all to do with our owner actually. He facilitated that happening. And you know you've got proper crowd barriers, so. No, this is much more recent. This is the 1980s when the concrete was laid here.
And there's a wooden stand out there I can see.
Yep.
Has that been difficult to keep it going? Has there been any
Absolutely.
safety issues?
Oh, absolutely, yes. And when it come to getting our ground grading for the league, they were horrified by the amount of wood that there was on the ground. But and they gave all sorts of instructions that we had to do some remedial work to make it much safer. Some of the worst parts of the wooden terracing have been taken down, and I'll show you when we walk round. So the bits that are left now are totally safe. There used to be quite big gaps, and they've made us fill in so no one can fall through, so it's a lot safer. We had the backdrop put in there as well.
What was that?
Again, that was because it was just loose wood at the back, and there was a gap at the end.
Oh, no.
So now you've got something firmer behind you.
So the FA made you do it?
Well, as I say, to get the ground grading,
Right.
if they don't, if they're not satisfied with the ground, you'll fail. So we had to. They made suggestions, and we went along. And we want it to be safe. Don't get me wrong. Because what we did find on a frosty night, particularly behind that goal, the wooden terrace was lethal because
Moisture.
the frost gets into it and it's so slippery.
Yeah.
And there have been games where we've actually cordoned it off because of that. But now, as I say, that doesn't apply, and it's nicely under the roof.
Inside of the club shop you can find a lot of old programmes from different clubs for just 10p each, alongside the usual hats, gloves, scarves and shirts. Also sold in the shop is the club's official history book, Tales of the Town, written by Neil Jensen. Neil's a football writer, and he actually helped me with finding out more about Hitchin's history for this video, so thank you to him for that. Make sure to purchase his book to find out more about the club's history. Well, that's the end of my day here in Hitchin and at Topfield, and I really have enjoyed myself. It's a fantastic stadium and a fantastic club. Even with no supporters here today, I can really feel the community sense, and I'm sure on a match day with the 400, 500 people that do turn up, Topfield can be a very, very special place. If you are a ground topper or just a football fan in general, please make sure to get yourself down to a Hitchin Town game, because I'm sure that you will enjoy yourself. You're not only supporting and helping out a local non-league club that's doing great things for their community, but you're also going to enjoy yourself, guaranteed, because this is, as I say, such a special place and such a special ground. Thank you very much to Roy for arranging the interview and for allowing me to come down here into Topfield. As I say, we've had a great time, and of course people like Roy, who really do love their non-league clubs, are the people that make non-league and football as a whole what the sport is. Those people are the beating hearts of non-league football. So thank you very much, Roy. And again, if you do want to come down here, make sure to contact him or make sure to come down to a game. If you did enjoy watching, please make sure to like, subscribe, share and comment, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.